Right. So here's my big question to you: Is do you think it changed at all when Disney bought Star Wars? Do you think it made it better? Do you think it made it worse? Or do you think that they continued the storyline in a great way?
So I think inevitably it changed, right? But if you think about it, when before Disney bought it, we weren't getting Star Wars. Like Star Wars The Clone Wars was on TV, but it was getting close to its end and that was it. We hadn't seen a new Star Wars movie since Revenge
Right.
of the Sith,
Very
which was
true.
like
10 years,
2003,
yeah, it's
2005,
a while
something
ago.
like that. So we weren't getting Star Wars. It was just kind of sitting there. When Disney bought it, for better or for worse, depending what people think on it, right? One way or another, it got us more Star Wars.
They finally continued the story.
Yeah. And so George Lucas, I don't know if I needed to
I
clarify
know.
that.
Right? It's,
I
like,
probably,
well, it's like, what the fuck you watching? Leave
I
if you
probably,
don't know.
did, I probably didn't need to clarify that.
It's like, oh, I watched Star Wars. It's like, dude, bro, it's in the name. Lucasfilms,
Yeah,
hello?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so George had a plan for another trilogy, but they weren't like working towards making it as far as I've been able to,
Right.
to pick up.
But they had
But
it.
he had a plan for it. And when Disney bought it from him and they were like, hey, we're going to make a new trilogy, right?
Right.
George was like, well, here are the ideas that I have. So go ahead and take those if you want. Like, have these ones for free, a
Right.
little cherry on top. And Disney was like, okay, cool. And then did not. So episodes 7, 8, and 9 are not at all the story that George Lucas had planned. And as much as I'm like bummed about that, I thought it would have been cool to be like, have like a send off to George Lucas, right? Like have it be his final vision.
Right.
As cool as that would have been, I don't think it's necessary.
Right.
I don't think.
Because there's a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of ways it could have ended. It's just like how many of those are good or how many of those are decent and bad,
Yeah. So I think I'm ultimately glad that Star Wars was purchased by Disney because we're seeing more of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, we got to continue the
Yeah,
story.
yeah. We're getting so much more of this thing that means so much to me. And even though it might not be exactly what it was, like, I don't think I'm exactly who I was when I first fell in love with Star Wars, right? Like, I've grown and I've changed.
Yeah.
And, like, so is Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
So I'm glad with what we're
came
at. Yeah, I'm glad with what we're getting.
And one thing I heard a lot is when I talk about Disney buying it, a lot of people get offended or they get upset. And what I love that really tied everything together for me is why I left that theater. Like I said, when I say like a lot of things tied back up, it's not even the storyline. It's my thought. Okay, how is Disney going to end this? Because I loved this scene so much. It's fucked. But I love the scene when Anakin is going upstairs and the door's open and all the kids are there like, Anakin, what's going on out there? And he just has that face.
Yeah.
And the fucking lightsaber goes on. You're like, holy fuck. And it doesn't show, but you just like the imagination,
yeah.
how horrible what just happened. And I loved that darkness in Game of Thrones. That's what, like, it really, really got to that core. Like, that is dark. And then Disney, the first couple of movies, I was like, where is that darkness? And it's Disney. I know they're trying to keep it a little bit lighter, but I missed it. But what I really loved that really just tied it all together is I think they were prepping it for the last movie. And I loved it when they had all the Siths in that room chanting that dark-ass chant. It was dark, like really dark, like chants. And they were just talking about bad shit. And he's back and all this just very evil to the core thing. And I was like, this is dark. Just watching it for the first time, like Big D Theater, the first day it came out, I was like, this is fucking dark.
Yeah.
And then of course everything ties up and it ends, and I was like, I loved it because they brought it back. It was like they didn't need to, but it like I wasn't upset about it, but it was that extra cherry on top that I was like, that's Star Wars.
Yeah.
That is what the core value. That's when you were talking about all this darkness and these things. I was like, that's what I loved about it, is they finally kind of just tapped on it one more time to really close out the entire series.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what Disney has done that's really cool is that they made Star Wars available in a way that it hasn't been before to like a wider audience than it ever has been before, right? So a lot of people, like, they're kind of looking at like the animated TV shows that they put out. Like Clone Wars is pretty dark. You see people getting cut in half on like on Cartoon Network. There's people die and it's this big deal. It's this dark, gritty, emotional show. Like Clone Wars is dark,
Damn.
and then they made Star Wars Rebels, and it was a little more lighthearted. Like the Jedi, they didn't stab any clone troopers, right? Like
Right.
people don't die. Like you see the Star Wars, like their speeder blows up and the stormtroopers kind of roll for a little bit and then sit up and like rub their head like they got a bad headache.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like it wasn't dark anymore, but I don't think it needs to be dark to be good, right?
Yeah.
Like what they did is they opened it up for a new generation of people to come in.
Right.
They made
exactly.
they made Star Wars accessible in a way that hasn't been. And if you're looking for dark in your Star Wars, right? Like that's where you get like Rise of Skywalker or like Last Jedi.
Or
Last Jedi it gets dark at
yeah,
times.
It does.
Like
it does.
like Kylo Ren is full of so much
Hate.
so much
Yeah,
anger, right?
yes.
And he's so vicious, he's brutal. So like you can get your darkness that way, or like Jedi Fallen Order. Like that game, I don't know if you played that one yet.
Nah. Oh, Jedi Fallen Order? The
Yeah.
new game that came out?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I beat it,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah, good
Oh my
as
god.
good as hell,
Wait,
right?
you played it?
Yeah, bro.
Oh my god, bro.
Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, good as hell, good as hell.
Did you get all of the lightsaber adaptions? Dude, so did I, bro.
Yeah, man.
That's crazy. I
Yeah.
haven't talked to someone that played that game. That
Yeah.
game is fucking
It is
phenomenal.
so good.
That was the best 15 hours of my life.
Oh, yeah.
The gameplay, like it's been so long since I played a game that the gameplay was the fun, the storyline was fun, that everything was so
Yeah.
like together. Like it was just like just enough open that you could like choose what planets to go to, but just close enough that kept your story on track.
Yeah, yeah, but like that story that gets a little bit dark. That story of
Yeah.
of the Padawan falling and
Yeah.
becoming like the Inquisitor.
Yeah,
and,
the first
and
like
being
20
hunted down.
minutes, your friend or boss, coworker, or whatever,
Yeah.
like dies.
And yeah, straight up
You're
murdered right in
just
front of
like,
you, right?
what
It just
the
gets
fuck?
murked. Yeah, like
Like I thought this was gonna be a whole storyline friend.
yeah, yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
they've made it accessible. If you want dark and gritty and serious, you have those routes. If you want a little more lighthearted, a little more fun, you have these routes.
Yeah.
And then they have like Galaxy's Edge that they just opened up at Disneyland and Disney World.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's for everyone. You can
Yeah.
go there and you can be in Star Wars.
And I think the point you're hitting on is solidly because that's what Disney does.
Yeah.
Is like me and my fiance went and watched the second Frozen. You know what I'm saying? Like we're going to all these Disney movies
Yeah.
because like as knowing the first one is, you're like, we gotta see the second one.
Yeah.
We gotta see where the story, and it's because it's like they know the balance. They literally, that's Disney. They built the formula to entertain a 5-year-old
Yeah.
all the way up to a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
And make sure they're both crying, you know,
Yeah.
a 50-year-old even.
Yeah,
And so,
like
yeah.
they made Star Wars accessible in a way that it never has been before.
Right.
And that's what I appreciate about it. Regardless of what you think about the new movie, you can't deny that more people love Star Wars than ever have before.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that it's everywhere, right? But it's like people care about it. You're having kids who are watching Star Wars on Disney Channel
Yeah.
and loving it, and that's Star Wars for them, right? You have those of us that have grown up with it who are getting to see that continue,
Right.
and you just can't help but be excited. You can't help but
Mm-hmm.
wonder what's next, and now you have everyone wondering what's next, like all around you.
Yeah, that's crazy. Never thought about it like that, but it's insane. I love that idea of it. It is more accessible because it's just a good story. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you said, like the beginning has that kind of more adult feel kind of thing or whatever. Definitely kid love, but now they really got to diversify. So two things I think you really hit on is Disney made it more accessible and all that, but they also continued the series, which may or may not have happened. I mean, most likely would have. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
But the fact is they made it happen. They brought closure to the Star Wars fans that, by the way, I mean, we're young. I mean, think about your dad that had to
Yeah.
wait
Yeah.
10 years
I know.
between. Holy shit.
Well, if you think about like
You know?
Star Wars came out in like 77
That's what I'm
and then
saying.
finished up in 2019.
Like
That's almost 40 years.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
if you find a 50-year-old, they were a kid in the theater that saw the very first one.
Yeah.
And,
That's how my dad was.
man.
My dad tells the story of how he went and saw the first Star Wars movie. He saw New Hope in a drive-in theater with his cousin. And as they were walking out of the drive-in theater in 1977, him and his cousin had picked up sticks off the ground and were fighting with lightsabers. Just right, like the 2 hours after the movie started, they were already in love enough to want to be Jedi themselves. And from 1977, that's what, like, my dad has been invested and involved and following and waiting.
Right.
Yeah.
For these movies, and he finally gets to get that closure.
This whole time, yeah.
Good for him, though, man. Good for him.